People like myself who were born here. People like Louis, who, although he was born in Puerto Rico, he was raised here. So what happened? If we were musicians, we would take and incorporate probably some blues and put a cha-cha montuno in there, some kind of, and a rhythm section of Latinos, and then we would get things like, we would start singing our lyrics in English, and then it became Boogaloo.
Hi, I'm Joe Batan, originally from El Barrio in Spanish Harlem. That's in Manhattan. For those that don't know, we call it Spanish Harlem. It went by El Barrio. It's got a whole lot of different names, but my particular area was like from 96th Street to 125th Street on the east side. And that's what's considered Spanish Harlem back there in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
One way to go about defining a megacity would be to say X amount of people or millions of people in a megacity. But I think this is a little bit reductionist in a way, because it doesn't give you much about what is different in a megacity from any other city. But I think the main, I can't remember who said that, but a good explanation is a megacity would be a place that you can find anything that you don't need. So the idea of kind of abundance of things, whether this is in terms of products or services, or whether this kind of manifests in terms of culture or different cultural movements, music and musical styles, different activities, but also this idea of kind of like a large agglomeration or a large area, quite dense, with many people, and the idea that people get into networks.
Who wouldn't dance to that? Who wouldn't be stoned out of their mind and just have fun with this? Let's have fun and, talk. And you just talk to those girls and they would go crazy. See? So whether you were African American, whether you were white, whether you were Puerto Rican, whether you were Dominican, Cuban, you would dance to this. And you were a teenager and you would go to St. George and dance to this, right, Louis?
Yes, sir. Yes.
I was born in 1942 in East Harlem. Harlem Hospital, which is still there. Came on my father's back at 4 years old, and we moved to 104th Street, and that's where my life really began. Growing up at that time, I had to read somebody else's quotes about me to really put a light on what I knew but had never expressed. And that was that Joe Batan was a minority growing up. You gotta understand, my father is Filipino. He's chinky with jet black hair. My mother's a black American from Newport News, Virginia, and I am the result. And when I say that, it's because for a long time I really didn't have like an identity. I grew up in Spanish Harlem, and most everybody there spoke Spanish. So I had to learn by trial and error how to speak Spanish, the customs, the music, the dancers, the girls. They're all in one.
People have good awareness of the differences within a city and the differences within urban environments, and the fact that they are excluded from many of these things that we consider given, I think makes them creates also or this cascading effect of social exclusion in many ways, and it can be manifested in several ways in terms of trying to get a job, but people knowing that you come from Islam are negatively prejudiced. Forget how crucial for socializing music is in certain cultures. There's always some type of dance. There's always some. It's a little bit like a party in many ways, and I think it's not just to show that the communities are benevolent and they're nice people, etc. I think it's part of their glue. I mean, also if you think about it, many of the musical styles that have come out throughout the history have come out from usually cities and usually the poor areas in the cities. I mean, if you look at hip hop, if you even look at music like jazz or things like that, these things have been developed in areas where probably marginalization was very, very much existent, and then I think more than thinking of music as an outlet or art as an outlet, I think we can think of it as a strong bond that sets the community in many ways together.
Puerto Ricans in New York were very powerful and active, and their culture influenced a lot of New York culture, and we're part of the history of New York. Just as Frank Sinatra, we had Tito Puente, we had, so we had all of that. We had the Young Lords, which I can proudly say to me, was the best social service agency we had in New York City.
You see, people are learning to struggle together. People are learning to fight together. And I don't think that's trouble, I think that's self-defense, I think we're defending ourselves, I think the trouble has already come whenever we...
In many ways, I think marginalization is what kind of spirals also or amplifies such issues, and particularly for the poor, where the community surrounding them is not is instrumental in terms of welfare. A lot of the times people who don't have any form of welfare, they rely on their peers, they rely on their families, on their community in order to get a lot of these things.
When I say I'm Puerto Rican, it means a lot to me. Not only because I'm part of the global community, but I'm part of a community in New York And I had, the beauty of me was that I had the both experiences. I listened to Puerto Rican music, but I also listened to the New York scene and the Motown, and I was around for Motown.
Yeah.
I was enriched and blessed in jazz, and so I had a lot of culture.
My first dream was to be a baseball player. Jackie Robinson was my idol. Unfortunately, I didn't grow to be big enough to play basketball or something, but I was a good ball player. I ran track. I thought I was going to get to the Olympics. Well, got in trouble. Went to prison. Reformatory. And looked like my life was over, and I was determined that day while I was in lockup, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to waste my life. I'm not going to make this an excuse that I'm locked up. Because when that judge said 5 years, I said, my God, I can't stay in there no 5 years. I said, oh my God, I said, I got to get out of here. What do I got to do? He said, well, if you do good inside, they'll let you out. I said, I'll be out in a week. I didn't know that was baloney. It wasn't going to be no week. I was determined now, if it's going to take me 10, 15 years, I'm going to go home and I'm going to study. I'm going to go to school, whatever. I went home, looked for a band. I had all kinds of combinations of bands, girls, gangsters, drug addicts, you name it. Everybody that played, anybody that wanted to play and had the patience to stand what I had to throw down, I welcomed, but everybody quit on me. All right? They thought I was crazy. They said, this guy is a fanatic. That's all he does. He always want to do music. So they couldn't understand, was this the same guy that used to be the tough guy around the neighborhood that was always fighting and always getting into trouble? Now he's into music, I took a group of kids that were in a community center. They were 12 and 13 years old, and they were playing in my space. Actually, I ran that school as a little tough guy from the neighborhood, and nobody would dare rehearse in my school's auditorium, which didn't really belong to me. But, that's the way things were back then. And they were inside there, and I went in there and I said, what the hell are you guys doing in here, man? You don't come in here rehearsing. And they looked at me, they must have knew my reputation. And then when I heard them playing, it dawned on me an idea, because everybody had left me and nobody wanted to play with me. They used to run away from me. Guys used to tell stories that they used to hide on the roof when I came into the neighborhood. They said, there he comes. He said, let's get out of here, because he's going to make us sing till 5 o'clock in the morning, and we'll never get out of here. So that's how fanatic I was. So when I saw these kids playing in that auditorium that day, I said, you know what? They don't have a piano player. I could make this a band.
If you think about playing music, in many ways, a music group acts like a community. You have issues, you have things that don't go the way you want. You have to negotiate certain things, among others. So some of the most interesting projects I've seen, and I think it's especially valuable for the youth, are projects where you do have people getting together around an artistic project, a musical project, and they understand a little bit more and they learn a little bit more about how to interact with others, how to do problem solving. In many ways, trying to play in a jazz band is a continuous effort to problem solve what is happening on the moment and try and improvise solutions that is going to make not you sound better, but it's going to make the whole group sound better. So I think it's very, I think through music and arts in general, it's a very powerful lesson of how to collaborate in a way. So I do think it's instrumental. I don't think this is going to solve the issues, but I think it's instrumental in understanding and training collaboration in a way.
I wanted to talk about anything, it would be about the Smithsonian. That's this portrait here. And when I got a call from the Smithsonian Center, Mr. Diaz, Eduardo, and he said they wanted to honor me from the Latino community for my contributions to music in the last 50 years. And I said, well, great, you know me. He said, yeah, we want you to perform and the whole thing. Bring the band to Washington and you'll play. I said, great. So what happened a week later, the African Portrait Society at the Smithsonian got in touch with Eduardo from the Latino and said, look, he's part Afro-American also. So we like to get involved in this tribute to him, you know, with the Latinos. And he said, well, sure, great. No problem at all, you know, because he has been a bridge to the black community and the Latino community. And then a week later, the Asian community called and said, well, wait a minute, he's part Filipino, you know, and he's done some contributions for us also, so we like to be involved. So what I'm thrilled about is that all of these three different cultures, Latinos, African Americans, and the Asian population got together to honor me at the Smithsonian for my contributions. And what they said was that I was a bridge between these different nationalities and how I brought people together and connected through my music. And that really brought a tear to my eye because, you know these things, but you never know that anybody understands or even knows what you're trying to say. You know, it's like the song Mestizo. When I say Latino, Taino, Chicano, Cubano, Dominicano, Argentino, Colombiano, Moreno, you know, I said, who's gonna understand what the heck I'm saying? And yet, it became the #1 song in Ecuador and Puerto Rico, and they understood. And it was done in English, but Spanish. So then when I did Chicana Lady, the raza went crazy. I said, it was not my fault that nobody else thought about doing something for the Chicanos. And then when I did Afro-Filipino, they said, well, gee, they couldn't think of a Filipino that said he was Filipino on a record, you know? And I'm sort of proud of that, you know, because I did that in the 70s, you know? And it was at a time where maybe the purists, even the Filipino purists, just like Latino purists, were not totally acceptable of Joe Bataan, you see? It's only the new generation all over the world that understands this. So that shows you how the mind has grown, right? From their parents and their grandparents about the strict restrictions that they had on race, creed, and all that garbage that was going on. These kids are now starting free thinkers, so they think, wait a minute. I was so proud to hear a girl come out of the closet and say, hey Joe, I'm an Afro-Latina. I said, get out of here. Never heard nobody say that before, but now the other guy says, you know what? I'm from Morocco and I'm part Filipino. They're proud. So these are people that you would say that wouldn't have been accepted before because they weren't pure this or pure that. All of a sudden they're coming into the fold. So the tide has shifted and Latin soul is here to stay because see, I knew that I couldn't remain a Boogaloo artist. I had to change the connotation and the stigma of the sound and the name. So Latin is always going to be around and soul is always going to be around. So when you put them together, you got a dynamic force that will last throughout the year.